RFK Jr. is the worst, and the list of reasons why RFK Jr. is the worst, and at the very least a terrible pick for Secretary of Health and Human Services, is longer than the brainworm they pulled out of RFK's head. Here are just a few highlights from the man we're supposed to all like now. He said American meat producers were a, quote, greater threat to the United States and US democracy than Osama bin Laden, and he said that less than a year after 9/11. He's called the NRA a terrorist organization. He said climate deniers were traitors who should face criminal prosecution in global courts. He wants socialized medicine, which is bad news unless you want the government to decide what treatments or drugs you're even allowed to get if you don't die on a waiting list first. He supports abortion up until birth.
So in other words, keeping it as is with Roe versus Wade having been overturned and leaving it up to the states to determine if and when a woman can have an abortion?
No, I wouldn't leave it to the states.
You wouldn't, right.
No, I would.
You would say completely, it's up to the woman.
My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have government involved.
Even if it's full term?
Even if it's full term.
He says fluoride in the water is turning kids gay. He said that HIV was phony. He opposes all fossil fuels. He said COVID was engineered to go after black and Caucasian people while sparing Ashkenazi Jews.
COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
And he praised COVID-19 lockdowns. And that's before we even get to the vaccine stuff. He said that no vaccine is safe and effective. He blames vaccines for an autism epidemic that he's also compared to the Holocaust. He said the polio vaccine has killed many more people than polio. I'm sorry, but RFK Jr. is not one of the many people who have nuanced, thoughtful, and evidence-based positions on vaccines and vaccine schedules. He's anti-vaccine, period. On the plus side, though, he's only driven one woman to her death, which is actually below average for a Kennedy. Look, the only reason we're even discussing him is because RFK is a Kennedy who is supposedly conservative now. And nothing he's ever said or done is relevant because he's apparently the last remaining person on planet Earth who thinks that we should improve American food or something. And by the way, if you actually want to improve our food, you should go after agriculture subsidies. But we're not going to do that because politics. So what do? Push someone for HHS secretary who's David Hogg mixed with Alex Jones and thinks COVID was designed to not kill the Jews, that American gun owners are terrorists, and that Big Pharma is out to give us all autism. Great work, team. And no, he's not just asking questions because he doesn't care about the answer. When someone keeps asking if 2 + 2 is 5, they're not asking questions anymore when someone proves that the answer is 4. And that's exactly what RFK does. Ask questions and then just ignore the answers. But there's something else I want to shine a light on from the confirmation hearings that really gets to the heart of why he's such a bad pick. And no, it's not the onesie stuff.
I've had nothing to do with leadership.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
No, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's the bit where Elizabeth Warren is 100% correct. Screechy, annoying, and still not Native American, but 100% correct.
I'm asking about fees from suing drug companies. Will you agree not to do that?
You're asking me to not sue drug companies,
no,
and I'm not going to agree to that,
drug
Senator.
Companies as much as you want.
I'm not going to agree to not sue drug companies or anybody.
So let's do a quick count here of how, as Secretary of HHS, if you get confirmed, you could influence every one of those lawsuits. Well, let me start the list. You could publish your anti-vaccine conspiracies, but this time on U.S. government letterhead, something a jury might be impressed by. You could appoint people to the CDC vaccine panel who share your anti-vax views and let them do your dirty work. You could tell the CDC vaccine panel to remove a particular vaccine from the vaccine schedule. You could remove vaccines from special compensation programs, which would open up manufacturers to mass torts. You could make more injuries eligible for compensation, even if there is no causal evidence. You could change vaccine court processes to make it easier to bring junk lawsuits. You could turn over FDA data to your friends at the law firm, and they could use it however it benefited them. You could change vaccine labeling. You could change vaccine information rules. You could change which claims are compensated in the vaccine injury compensation program. There's a lot of ways that you can influence those future lawsuits and pending lawsuits while you are Secretary of HHS, and I'm asking you to commit right now that you will not take a financial stake in every one of those lawsuits so that what you do as secretary will also benefit you financially down the line?
I'll comply with all the ethical guidelines.
That's not the question. You have said
You're asking me, Senator, you're asking me not to sue vaccine pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, you are. That's exactly what you're doing.
Look, no one should be fooled here. As Secretary of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Call me crazy, but the person who runs the Department of Health and Human Services should, 1, know things, like the difference between Medicare and Medicaid, which, by the way, RFK does not, and 2, be objectively motivated by public health and not personal wealth. RFK Jr. might pretend like he's just a crusader for the truth, but under it all, he's also raking in the organic dough. Just because there are legitimate criticisms you can make of Big Pharma, that doesn't mean RFK Jr. is the one to make them, or that he's doing so honestly or without another motive. And this brings me back to where Elizabeth Warren is right. There is a massive conflict of interest going on here that people are ignoring, like RFK Jr.'s history of being a lunatic Democrat. Because it's one thing to make money by being wrong. Everyone at MSNBC does that, but it's another thing to be paid by taxpayers to hold a government office that helps you regulate the same people you're trying to profit from. So Kennedy founded the Children's Health Defense, CHD, which is basically an ambulance-chasing organization that has waged legal war against vaccines. And one example is Gardasil, the HPV vaccine, with the CHD and the law firm Wisner Baum launching dozens of lawsuits against Merck. And as a private individual, it's really not a problem. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, problem. Why? RFK has claimed his career at CHD was unpaid, but he's underreported hundreds of thousands of dollars he's made in the last few years alone, and in total, he's made millions. Because he receives 10% of the cash awarded in successful cases, he's referred to Wisner Baum. And he says he's referred hundreds of cases to the firm. Now, RFK is now saying he'll divest interest in ongoing lawsuits, but is that true? Because court dockets say otherwise. And just a few weeks ago, in a written response to questions for the record from the Senate Finance Committee, he said he wouldn't recuse himself from Gardasil litigation, and that he is diverting his interests in litigation to his son. Hunter Biden, is that you?
Come on, man.
But I guess we can just add this to the ever-growing list of things RFK Jr. has miraculously changed his mind on. Look, I can't stand RFK Jr. because he's a pro-abortion, anti-fossil fuel, anti-Second Amendment, anti-vaccine, pro-socialized medicine, lunatic Democrat quack. But this is America, and you're allowed to be a pro-abortion, anti-fossil fuel, anti-Second Amendment, anti-vaccine, pro-socialized medicine, lunatic Democrat quack if you want. But what you shouldn't be allowed to do is attach yourself to the winning side, because don't forget, he was all too happy to suck up to Kamala Harris too, and be put in charge of legislating the people you're also suing. That's corrupt. That's the swamp. That's the opposite of the radical transparency that Trump has promised and largely delivered so far. If RFK is a true believer, the least he can do is actually recuse himself. After all, if he's just asking questions, why does he need to make millions in the process?